Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another exciting episode of Caught on the Mic. I cannot speak on the behalf of my next guest, but I can say for myself, summer of 2025 has felt like a summer full of full circle moments. I don't know what it is, man. I walk outside, I'll go take a walk around the neighborhood, and it will feel like I'm back to the late 90s, early 2000s. Music is coming back in a roundabout way. And, you know, we have a kind of a big event coming up in our area. On July 12th, 2025, 89.7 The River is hosting their 30th anniversary bash with 311, Sublime, The Urge, Blue October, Sick Puppies, and my next guest, Mr. Hector Anchondo. How the heck are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So are you having similar feelings lately?
I have been. I just been seeing like there's a lot more like I want to say like organic, like more feel good music that is more relatable and all that good stuff. I feel like I've been noticing it more as well. And I'm definitely all about it.
Yeah, you and me both. And it's weird because I know during the pandemic era, it's like people that used to take a shit on bands like Limp Bizkit came around to Limp Bizkit. And now all the party bands like the Sublimes and the 311 and everybody that makes music to feel good is like having their own little bit of renaissance, plus all these awesome bands that are kind of coming up alongside those bands. What do you think the reason for that is?
I think, maybe it's, there's probably, lots of reasons, but I think one of the reasons is I think people are turning, we always turn towards music to help kind of heal our soul and heal what we got going on inside. And I think right now, we need that feel good music more than ever right now. So yeah. I think that's at least one component.
Yeah, for sure. So for people that might not be as familiar with you as I am, let's kind of take a step back to the beginning and kind of jump into your origin story and kind of what got you started in music yourself.
I got started in music. I didn't realize that it was for, when I was younger, I didn't realize how much I loved music or how much I was into it until later looking back. I was in, choir all the way through high school. I auditioned for the band and I got into the band in high school, or in junior high, but I had to bow out because, I guess, maybe it was just going about learning music that way wasn't for me. Right. And, but I stayed in choir all the way through. And it was when I was 16, we rarely ever got, we didn't have cable TV where I grew up out in Missouri on a farm, way out in the sticks. So, but we did have a satellite dish that looked like we're a part of some kind of experiment. Just one of those big giant old school satellite dishes, and it would always get struck by lightning. So, my mom only got it fixed a couple times growing up, but one of the times that it was working, I was watching VH1, I think is what it was, and they played Guns N' Roses' November Rain, and Slash was playing that really beautiful guitar solo in that song. And that's when I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to play some beautiful guitar, and then I got started shortly thereafter.
Yeah. And so how long between you starting and you forming your first band, how long of a space of time was that?
I would say maybe about a year, because wow. I really wanted, once I was in that mindset, it took me about a year to be able to sing and play. Yeah. And then once I started being able to sing and play, I, started jamming more with people from school at the high school that I went to, and and then just got eventually there was enough people to get a band going, and I think it was within a couple years. Well, right away I started doing like little shows and stuff at school, but I think it was within a couple years I played my first show at a venue coffee house called the Coffee Grind in Rolla, Missouri, which was about 25 miles down the road.
Your band Anchondo, you guys started up and played the Ranch Bowl for the first time. What was it? 2000, 2001?
Yep. Right around there for sure.
Yeah. So let's talk about the origin of that band in particular, because that's for those of us that have those rosy tinted glasses memories of the Ranch Bowl era. You guys are definitely a band that stuck out. So let's talk about how that band came together.
So I moved to Omaha in '99, and I started playing the open mics around town. And my cousin George, who goes by Big G in the band Anchondo, he, became interested in guitar, so I started teaching him some guitar. So
Right.
I think it was only like a couple weeks later, I had talked him into getting on an open mic stage with me, and it was an open mic downtown Omaha called Stage Right, and I think they did it every Monday night, I believe, and that open mic went on for a lot of years. But that was mine and Big G's first performance together, and then from there, George, our Big G had his cousin was Justin Gomez, and he played some bass because Justin's dad was a musician, and so that's how we found our bassist. And then my cousin, and we were in our early 20s,
Right.
and my cousin, I've always been, it's like that mindset of like, just tell anybody and everybody that you're trying to find, what you're trying to find, and it'll find its way to you. So I told my little cousin, I think he was maybe 11 or 12 at the time. And then he's like, oh, my friend's older brother plays drums.
Oh,
I was
wow.
like, oh, let's audition. And in my mind, his older brother was, older. So I met the guy who's Alex Mosier, who's still the drummer to this day.
Amazing.
And he, very tall guy. Everything about him seemed older. Auditioned him. He was a great drummer. And it wasn't till years later that we found out his real age. But he was only 15 at the time. But he did not. He's a tall dude. He's like 6'6".
Right.
And so he did not look like he was 15. So it was that classic, like we were sneaking him into the bars, or he'd have to go stand outside when we weren't playing, kind of thing. When we were playing out in different areas, but yeah. So that's how all the members, the starting members, found each other.
Yeah. I forgot about the fact that Alex was much younger than you guys, but like let's be honest, like you couldn't have asked better arrangement at that point in time with the Omaha music scene being as vibrant as it was.
Yeah.
To have somebody that's high school age embedded in your band while you're like taking a stab at it, right?
Totally. It was there was an age gap there, but it just really it just worked. The chemistry was there from the beginning.
And you guys had a single, She Devil, that hit on 89.7 The River, shortly after forming and playing a routine of shows at the Ranch Bowl. What was that like whenever you had a song hit on radio while you're still a young band?
Oh, it was an incredible feeling. It exceeded our expectations. Because at the time it was getting, it went on for a long time, but it was getting like 50 spins a week. And, that changed our lives. All of a sudden we're playing sold out shows, and it was a it was a cool learning experience. It was we were there for the ride. It was amazing, and it was cool because back then we still, you know, uh, people bought albums from shows with from new artists. And
Right.
so it was, we had the lines of folks waiting to get the CD and the autograph on the CD. And so I'm so glad that I got to really experience that. And we all did. I was glad we all got to experience that before things moved on and changed. But it was like the whole thing, and it was amazing.
Yeah, when you and I were texting and setting up this episode, we've played a few shows together, but like I said, we were kind of like ships passing in the night because I think when Enchando blew up, I was going through a series of band lineup changes and redefining my sound at the time to where, your album dropped after you guys had recorded at Presto to the point where you guys inspired me to record the second 3QE album at Presto as well, just because the fidelity was so good. And it was a little bit more affordable than the Warehouse was at the time, but just
No
as
doubt
good
about that.
quality. But just as good a quality. And so I know whenever we released our second album, we just kind of turned our faces outward as opposed to working on the Omaha scene, because the one thing I will say, and I'm not shitting on Omaha by any degree, so don't take this away from that, is that Omaha is not really forgiving when it comes to giving people a redemption arc, so to speak.
Yeah.
You get one chance to make a first impression, and I know my initial lineup of Three Quarter Evil, 3QE wasn't the best thing in the world. Years have gone by, and I say that, but it was such a growing experience at such a vibrant time in the local music scene. How did you embrace, or did you feel the local music community embraced you guys?
Uh, I think the local scene was really supportive. Um, and I think there was something really cool about the Omaha scene that I thought I was like, oh, this is, as a youngster, I thought this is what it's like everywhere. I think
Right.
where Omaha really shined was people gave bands a chance, and people would go see bands they'd never even heard of, or even like didn't know anything about. They're like, oh, that's who's playing tonight. Let's go do that. And if they're good, cool. And if they're not, we still
Right.
got the ranch. We'll do some bowling or what have you. But it was cool because, especially at the Ranch Bowl, it was awesome that people would just show up regardless who was playing, because it was like the whole um it was just that whole I'm forgetting the word. It's just that whole community
Yeah.
that whole lifestyle that Omaha had revolving around Ranch Bowl,
Yeah.
that people would just show up.
Do you have a favorite memory from that era playing at the Ranch Bowl or during that time that still blows your mind to this day?
Oh man, that's a tough one, but I'd say I'd say how into the music people were at that time. I feel like Omaha, people really got into it. People were dancing. People were like, you know, shouting out different things to the band. People really got involved. It was like, it was very cool. And I think, I honestly think that's kind of something that, Omaha has its music lovers still, and Omaha is still a supportive town. But there was something that changed. People don't seem to get as involved as they used to. So I love that about that time. Um, you know, People were, doing, the mosh pit, thing too back then, but, the dancing and all that, it's a little bit different now in the Omaha scene in regards to that. So
Yeah.
I'd say that was the energy at the time was my favorite thing about Marriage Bowl.
Yeah, yeah, same here. I've got so many memories. Like bowling with Less Than Jake after a Less Than Jake show, or like sitting in the bar on a dead Thursday night where a band's getting their first chance or first shot playing at the bowl, and like the guys from Tonic just randomly showed up in the bar and sat down and had drinks with us.
Yeah,
Or
that's
seeing
rad.
there's tons of things like that, or like seeing My Chemical Romance to a room of 50 people, and you're like, you think about those moments now and you're like, that would never happen now because of social media or interest media and how
Yeah.
people are so distracted now. But I have many times on this show cited the Ranch Bowl as being the Forrest Gump of local music venues because of how many touch points with history it had.
Yeah,
So,
I love that about Ranch Bowl too, and how, these sometimes, not famous at the time, but famous now, or sometimes really famous at that time.
right.
I loved how they would just folks would just go bowling, and you could be bowling next to like lit.
Right.
You know, that was cool. I got to meet those guys. The first time I got to see Buddy Guy was at Ranch
Yes.
Bowl. I mean, I was like peeking through the chain link fence through the doors of the Ranch Bowl to get a glimpse of him, and Sophia John was like, "What are you doing back here?" I was like, I was just trying to. I was like, I'm just trying to catch a little bit of Buddy Guy. She's like, "Get on in there," and so that was super cool. And that I'd say that was also, that's probably one of my favorite moments too. Is getting to experience that, and that was back when Guy had the long locks, and
Yeah.
he was just a party animal on and off stage.
That's so funny because it sounds like your relationship when you were younger is very similar to what my relationship was like with Sophia when I was younger. I was the punk rock kid when I was like 16, going to Des Moines and watching the Slipknot shows when they were a local band. And she kind of took me under her wing back then myself in a very similar way. Was there a key artist or album at that point in time that flipped a switch for you and changed the way that you approached music when you were in the thick of it back then?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say there was several artists back then. Pomeroy was one of them. They were, because they were just so good.
Yes.
So I feel like they inspired everybody, no matter what genre it was, because they were just so tight and so good. And
Yeah.
that definitely, seeing them play and hearing what it could sound, how tight things could be, definitely was a big turning point for me and the guys in my band too.
Yeah, I think that's a common sentiment among all of us. It's that iron sharpens iron mentality. Whenever you're surrounding yourself with really good acts, it forces you to get better yourself.
Totally. And uh gives you a window into what it could be like,
Right.
because sometimes when you're young, I think it's hard to know where to go with it. I mean, you might have some good songs and you're working hard at it, but you don't know exactly, or at least me, I know I didn't know exactly what to do for sure to get, to keep growing and keep getting better. But hearing a band like that, just, it was definitely like a window into like, like, okay, we need to figure out how to get tight. Like, that's at least one of the ways we can get better is that,
Yes. Yes. I remember playing to a similar extent. I remember playing a show at the Music Box with Grasshopper Takeover and Kurt Grubb watching our entire set and then sitting down with us and literally giving us notes for every single song we played and exactly what we did. And he was like, you need to start practicing to a metronome, practice to a click track, practice transitions, do this, do that. And like, I had the Reese brothers on a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know if you're familiar with them. They're on Nick Hexum's label, and they were talking about.
I've heard of the name.
Oh, dude, you should check them out. Especially you should check them out. But
I will for sure.
They were talking about. I was asking them what they learned as a young band, because they started when they were like 16 and 19, and they were touring with Chicago and all these other big name bands. Yeah. Yeah. And they said as a young band, the first thing that they learned was professionalism and how that reputation could carry itself. Like, you had to learn at a young age to become a professional looking, sounding, and acting band. And, how much that played into their evolution. So speaking of evolution, let's kind of start to move away from the past and let's move towards the future. So how did you transition from the band Anchondo to Hector Anchondo as a solo artist and as a blues artist?
I started out with learning how to play some blues guitar leads. And when you listen to the Anchondo solos, you can hear that bluesiness in them. And, when, different members of the band started having kids and, it felt like it was time to like take a break from that for a while. I started playing, I kind of went back to my roots, and I started playing with a blues and R&B band in Omaha.
Yeah.
And I became their lead guitar player. And that reminded me how much I loved that style. And they were called Burgundy and Gray. And that was such a wonderful experience learning from, they were much older than I was at the time. And still even much older than what I am now. They were older fellas, but they all just had the best attitudes, and they were they were all about the vibe, and it was cool. So that got me going, and that helped me redefine my direction as a musician, just overall. And then while I was doing that, it was kind of like everything was pulling me towards that, because a friend of mine, Tim Convey from the band Ludo, who was also around in that time, the Ranch Bowl era.
Right.
He reached out to me because every once in a while we would just with Anchondo, we'd play some blues. And so one of the nights that we played some of that, Tim Convey heard it. So years later, he calls me up and he's like, "Hey, I got this crazy idea." He's like, I want to be part of like putting together a Hector Anchondo blues album. And he's like, "How would you feel about that?" He's like, "I know it's a crazy idea, but what are you thinking?" And I said, "Absolutely." Cause the universe is already pulling me that way. And just out of the blue, he calls me and asks me that. And I said, "Let's do this." And so that's kind of really what got me going in that, like, besides my love of that style and genre, it was like just the universe was kind of calling out to me.
Yeah, as artists and creatives, you can't ignore serendipitous moments like that. You almost have to lean into them because, sometimes the universe is telling you to go left, and all of a sudden something like that happens and it's telling you to go right, and you better just ignore the universe and say, "Hey, let's take this bigger sign and go down that road." Since you've been a blues artist, you've had an impressive run at the International Blues Challenge. What was that experience like, from going from semifinalist to eventually first place in 2020?
Oh, it was a mind-blowing experience. It kind of, in some ways, it kind of reminded me of South by Southwest.
Sure.
But just in a different realm, kind of, so to speak. And so that was really fun, and it was cool. There's bands from all over the world there. So you got to hear these different folks playing their versions of the blues, and it was magic down Beale Street in Memphis, Tennessee. So it was exciting, and the competitive part, it was cool to see. Nobody had any bad attitudes or anything, because sometimes in the music industry it can kind of get like that, especially the competitive stuff, which I'm not a fan of. I'm not a fan of the competitive stuff. So I was really pleased to see that it wasn't like that. Everybody was like, "Hey, let's be friends, let's network together." And I liked that. So
Yeah.
that was cool. And as you walk down Beale Street, you could hear, you hear one band coming from one doorway, and then you hear another band from another. It was great. It was, and seeing other artists do their thing, um, especially the artists that were the really good ones too. Like any of the artists you could take away inspirations from, but there were some
Right.
of those ones that really shined and again gave you kind of an idea of like, like that's I I could work on this part of what I do to take it there and have kind of windows into where you could go with it.
Yeah.
And and then and in 2015 we made it to the semifinals, which we felt like we won, because our only goal was to make it to the semifinals, and we didn't expect anything more than that. In fact, we didn't expect anything, but our goal was to at least make it to the semifinals, and we made it. And so we felt like we won. And then, in fact, we got like this really great festival gig in Florida because a talent buyer overheard us celebrating um the semifinals, and he thought it was he got such a kick out of it that we were so happy about that, about making it, just there, that he invited us to come play at his fest in Tampa. I think it was Tampa. Yeah. No, it was Bonita Springs. So, and then in 2016 we went again and we made it to the finals. That was cool. That was a big learning experience because getting to the finals, I think there was things that we during our finals at the Orpheum, I think nerves got the best of us, and also there were some things we did. We got a little too. It was such a huge stage. One of our things that if we could go back and do it differently, or what we would do the next time, was we were really far away from each other on stage because where the monitors were at, and I think that kind of
Yeah.
like detached us from our chemistry. So we all had a hard time connecting that night. So if we could go back, that was it was a nice learning experience, and that's something that we are mindful of to this day. We pull it in close, and if we're on a big stage, we make sure we don't get too far from each other so we can have that connection.
Yeah.
And then in 2020, I went as a solo act. I went and I worked. I was playing this Tuesday night gig for years as a solo act, and I worked on. I kind of just thought, like, hey, if I'm ever gonna compete in the International Blues Challenge again, I'm just going to imagine that I'm going to again one day. And so I was just worked on it for a couple years on the solo stuff, and eventually I went, and it was like all these moments that felt like I was in the right time in the right place all week long. I ended up going the first two nights in the quarterfinals. I played. Uh, I think both nights were a little later. But let me back up. Like when I did in the Nebraska Blues Challenge, I ended up getting, they draw straws to see who goes in the lineup. I ended up drawn to go first out of all the bands. Which at the
Oh
time I
no, nobody
thought,
wants that.
yeah, totally. At the time I thought, this hour and that, but I was like, oh well, I'll go first and I'll be able to get over the nerves faster. So then I did the quarterfinals, and those were both later, but the semifinals, I got drawn to go first. And so I was like, I kind of flipped it around, and I thought, hey, this is a good thing because I don't need to sit there and watch all these other great artists and get inside my own head. I can just play, do my thing, and then get off the stage. And because I was like just really mindful, I
Yeah.
didn't want to get in my head about anything. And then I made it to the finals. And then again, my name got drawn to go first again in the finals. So I took it as a blessing. So again, I got there. I didn't have any time to get in my own head, and I just did my set, and then it surprised to me, I ended up winning and I wasn't even backstage where I was supposed to be when they called my name. So I had to hurriedly get back there. It was a little embarrassing, but it was mind blowing. I felt like I was like at any moment somebody was gonna say, "What are you doing back here?" Or like even when they called me, like when I went up on to the stage, all I had was this feeling like, am I like, did I hear something wrong? Like, are they going to tell me to get off the stage if I woke up there? It was just a mixed bag of emotions.
To retrace a few things that you kind of brought up is the whole competitive nature of being involved in art. That warms my heart to hear that despite the fact that you were competing against these other artists, that there was still a sense of community. And kind of drawing a further parallel to it, I think everybody, their first time on a ginormous stage like that, has that rock band mindset where like, we got to spread out, we got to like work the stage from all angles. But if you go and see bands like Marcus King or like even Chris Stapleton, the band is all really tightly close together for the exact reasons that you talked about being challenging for you guys. That's crazy stuff. So let's talk about where you're at right now in 2025. You know, this big show for 89.7 The River is coming up. You know, blues artist in one hand, contemporary pop rock reggae artist in the other hand. How do you balance both with what you're about to do in July?
You know, I guess it is a tough balance. I don't do as many shows with Anchondo as I do with like Hector Anchondo, either solo or with my band.
Sure.
But it's
Yeah.
still a tough challenge. And I I just, I rehearse a lot with the guys, and that helps keep me like, straightened out with the different music. And so I'd say I owe a lot to the guys being willing to get together and rehearse so much. So that really helps. And um I think I've always just worked a lot and played a lot because I think that helps too, because I've always been in the mindset of like, thinking about, the big music towns, you know, and Omaha is still growing to this day, becoming more and more of a music town.
Yeah.
But I always think about the big music towns like Nashville or Chicago or New York, where people um can not only play full time but make a really good living. And it's not even the good living part. I mean, that would be awesome, but the fact that part of how they become such musical beasts is because they're playing nonstop all the time, and it's a way of life. And that's how I've always strived to just do the same thing so that I can keep growing. And so that, I think the amount that I play, as often as I play, I think helps keep everything straightened out for me.
Well, and I've pointed this out multiple times on recent episodes that audiences have become more attuned to the musician's mindset. Like you and I being musicians, we've always listened to everything. You know, you cited Guns N' Roses early on, but you're also talking about Buddy Guy. And I think about like the fact that I'll listen to somebody like Atmosphere, then turn around and listen to like the Bill Evans Trio or some other jazz album or something along those lines, or go listen to a hip hop record.
Yep.
Yeah. I think absolutely. And as a father of teenagers myself, and now future musicians, one thing that I've noticed is we can demonize social media and we can demonize streaming all day long, but at the same time, what it has done and has managed to do is eliminate blurred lines of genre to where kids just listen to music for the sake of it being music. They just listen to music now.
Love that.
They don't think of things in terms of rock band or country band or anything along those lines. Do you kind of Do you kind of feel that that's played into your evolution a little bit as well?
Absolutely. I do for sure. I mean, my kids are like hearing all different kinds of genres constantly, and it's becoming just music, and I think
Yes.
I think that gives pathways to new and exciting um artists and songs and with the different flavors. And I really like that. And I think people are waking up to that there's more sounds out there in general than what the
Yeah.
mainstream is that's being fed to everybody. Um, and so it's nice that people are realizing that there's more than just the 1 4 5,
Right.
chord music, 1 4 5 6, like it's like there's more to it than just those main four chords, you know,
Right.
which those are good
Yes.
ones.
Yes.
I love those, but there's more.
So what's next for you musically aside from this show? Is there more in Anchondo's future, or and is there more in Hector Anchondo's blues future?
Yes, there's so Chondo, we've been talking a lot about putting out, because it's nice in today's day and age that you don't have to have the pressures of putting out a full album, which is
Right.
really cool. Because I mean, putting out a full album is really stressful for me anyway. Like because it takes me a long time to feel good about songs being ready to record. So being able to put out less songs at a time is definitely appealing to me. And so it's a win to do that in the way today people consume music today. So in Anchondo, we've talked about we have one song. We've talked about putting out like either 2 or 3 songs, like
Mm-hmm.
sometime in the future, which I would love to start doing that, maybe once a year or every couple of years. Um, and then the Hector Anchondo band, we're we're working on we're raising some money to get the next album out and hopefully start recording in the next month or so. The songs are all
Awesome.
ready, so time to get some new music out. Also, this year I went to NAMM in Anaheim, California this year, and it was my first time going there. And I did not expect this, but I ended up getting an endorsement through a guitar company in France.
Awesome.
So yeah, and I haven't mentioned this anywhere yet. So that was in January, but so now they're shipping out the guitar this week, so it's finished finally, and it's
Awesome.
being sent out. So that's some big news, and um, you know, I guess that's big news for both bands, the Hector Anchondo band and Anchondo, because to have it's just a cool feeling and experience to have that endorsement called Magneto Guitars.
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
yeah,
That is awesome. So, what advice would you give to a younger artist trying to find his or her voice in today's music scene?
I would say try to learn something new every day, a good practice regimen. Also, learn different styles. I think learning different styles is the absolute best way to developing your own voice, whether
Yeah.
it be musically or vocally, or instrumentally or vocally, um, is the best way to develop your own voice and style
Yeah.
in general.
I love that, man. I love that. So, my closing question is my most favorite question to ask everybody that does the show. And it's kind of a little bit off the cuff, but I like everybody's unique answer. And that is, what is your advice for making the world a better place tomorrow than what it is today through your experience?
You know what? I have a good one. I feel like it's a good one. I've been thinking about it a lot. Um, Waving at people, like acknowledging that we each other exist, waving at letting the person on the road, in traffic, let them in, let them in, wave at them. They don't wave, who cares? Just wave at them. But I think, building that back up in because we don't, a lot of times people don't wave at each other anymore. We don't even smile at each other anymore. Like when we're out and about doing our daily things, I think waving, smiling, saying hi, I think, and starting bring that kind of thing back would make a big difference in everybody's happiness. They would, I feel like we're all so removed from each other because of, social media has its pros and cons. But I think, just doing that little gesture would acknowledge that, hey, you exist, I exist, we're all in this together kind of a thing. So
random acts of kindness and acknowledgement is what it all boils down to.
Totally.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, January shit. Where am I at? July 12th. July 12th, Rivers Edge Park, Council Bluffs, Iowa, 89.7, the Rivers 30th anniversary show. You can see this strapping young man front the band Anchondo. I'm looking forward to it. I know all of you are looking forward to it. Hector, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you and your music online?
So if you go to hectorblues.com, that'll take you to the Hector Anchondo music. But by way of that, you could find the Anchondo music. I mean, it's on all streaming platforms. There's 3 variations. Like there's Anchondo, there's Hector Anchondo, and there's Hector Anchondo Band, or the 3 different spaces that you can look up the music.
Check it all out, everybody. Every last bit of it. I got to tell you, man, I led off this episode by talking about full circle moments and redemption arcs and things of that nature. And I got to say, man, if I were to express any one regret, it's the fact that you and I have never sat down and had a conversation like this in the past, even though we've kind of, like I said, ships passing in the night. But I look forward to many more in the future. Glad to know you.
Awesome.
Dude, glad to know you. I can't wait to hang out in real life.
Likewise,
and
brother.
The world's a much better place with you in it, my friend.
You too, brother. Thank you.
Thanks for doing the show, man.
I really appreciate you having me. It means a lot.